Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 this Tuesday morning. Hey, thanks, Andrew Langer, for sitting in for me Friday, Monday. It's my annual visit back west to see my dad, who cannot travel because of his advanced years. And so the mountain goes to Muhammad, as it were. And all my brothers and I, they're visited the greater Portland area, which is a complete pigsty. Thanks, liberals, for ruining a beautiful city. I've got more on that a little later as the morning develops. Also, coming up at 6:05, Michael Rivera will join us, running for Loudoun County School Board. 6:35, Sheriff Mike Chapman running for re-election in Loudoun County. 7:05, Adam Kratos got some great updates on how terrorists infiltrated the Biden administration's foreign policy, and they're still there. Yeah, that's right. I said it, terrorists. And at 7:35, Dr. Jennifer London, brand new book called Profiles in Character. In fact, we've got a book event coming up next week with Dr. London. We're going to talk about that. Larry O'Connor here. Julie Gunlock, thanks for carrying all the heavy weight yesterday with Andrew Langer. Right. I know Langer just comes in here and he's sort of like, oh, Julie's got it. I'll just coast. I'll just be the pretty face.
We had fun, but I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. Well, fun. Fun's a general term, considering the news cycle that we find ourselves in.
I know.
It's incredible to me, the pressure on Israel to not fight and win a war. You know, it's 12 days now it's been? 12 days since over 1,000 Israelis, innocent civilians, were murdered, raped, kidnapped, some of them, all three.
Burned
alive, babies decapitated, and the only conversation that we're allowed to have, I guess, apparently, is that, we need to have a proportional response. As Douglas Murray said, I don't know if you saw the clip of Douglas Murray.
I may have watched that 300 times.
Oh,
it was like political commentary and The Crown.
Yeah.
Together.
Because they have the accents. Yes. Douglas Murray on BBC was asked about the proportionality. He says, so I guess that Israeli soldiers should go door to door in Gaza and kill exactly the right amount of civilians, innocent civilians.
Rape the same amount of women. The best part was he's like, first you have to find a music festival in Gaza. He goes, good luck finding a cultural event in Gaza. And he said it with that, that sort of British accent, which was just hilarious. I mean, but he made some great points. Why are we talking about proportion? Why are we doing this?
It's outrageous. And literally 12 days away, they still are holding captives. They're still holding Americans.
And again, you can also tell that the media has their talking points because this proportionate response question has been asked over and over again. And again, this is a way to sort of shame Israel.
Who said when Hamas created this atrocity, and their apologists who were still marching in the streets of America even saying, well, this was an appropriate, this is what happens when you occupy. I said, okay, well, wouldn't the appropriate response then would be to peacefully occupy the Israelis? Right. That's the proportional response to so-called occupation.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the leader of the free world, the president of the United States, and I say that with all irony, appeared on 60 Minutes.
Late Thursday, we met President Biden at the White House. It had been a rough week, and we could see it on him. Mr. Biden will be 81 next month, and he has said that when he's tired, his lifelong stutter can creep back in.
Oh, Kelly is such an apologist.
I got to tell you, there's something really creepy about watching a man Joe Biden's age getting a full body massage on television.
A happy ending.
But yeah, Scott Pelley was there to do the job.
But he wedged us into his schedule to express his commitment to Israel after the massacre of more than 1,000 civilians 8 days ago.
By the way,
how good of him.
Somebody checked his schedule that day. He had a morning briefing and a 5 o'clock appearance, and that was it. So he was they wedged him in to the giant 10-hour gap. Yeah, we can wedge you in.
They didn't mention the nap and
So he was asked about Israel and what their appropriate response should be, right?
Israel has one of the finest fighting forces in the country. I guarantee we're going to provide them everything they need.
So within Israel has one of the best fighting forces in the country of Israel. That's Johnny on the spot. Maybe he meant Israel has one of the best fighting forces in our country. America. Or maybe he meant Israel has one of the best fighting forces in the world. Here's the problem. At a time of crisis, we shouldn't have to decipher what the hell the man meant. But that's his there goes his stutter again, Julie.
Oh, yeah, it's a stutter.
It's a stutter. He's so tired.
Yes, our team is talking with him about that and whether there could be a safe zone We're also talking with the Egyptians, whether there's an outlet to get these children and women out.
See, but nowhere...
The Egyptians who won't let any Gazan citizens into Egypt. Got it. They cut off that pass.
And nowhere in this entire explanation about what we're doing to help women and children in Gaza, because that's the main concern here, even though Israel has been announcing, saying, get out, because we're coming, get out. Right. Nowhere in there does the President of the United States, with any kind of moral clarity, say, well, tell you what, Scott Pelley, the problem here is Hamas. Because Hamas is actually forcing the women and children to stay in the zone.
Hamas created this situation. Hamas actually tells people to stay.
Right. Oh, they're forcing them to stay with roadblocks. They're forcing them to stay.
And then when they
gunpoint.
Actually do get in their cars and drive away, they bomb them with IEDs.
Yeah.
And then they blame Israel.
You would like to see a humanitarian corridor that allows some of the two...
You know, this is why I could never host 60 Minutes, because I don't talk like this. Did he talk like this his whole life? How does this develop?
Him at Thanksgiving, please pass the turkey.
I think it's the CBS News thing. It's like, if you want to go anywhere at CBS News, everyone has to pretend they're watching.
Million Gazans out of the area.
Yes.
You would like to see humanitarian supplies brought into Gaza?
By the way, I love, instead of saying, Mr. President, what would you like to see? Instead,
I know.
Just say yes or no. True or false?
It's like Dianne Feinstein. Just say yes. Just say yes.
Exactly. And you know, off camera, Scott Pelley's like giving him this big nod. The answer is yes. God. I'm going to say the thing.
Scott Pelley has had a heating wrap on his neck for days because he was nodding his head.
You would like to see... I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading Valerie Jarrett's handwriting here.
Yes. So you do not agree with the Israeli total siege of the Gaza Strip?
Spoon feeding.
All right. So this is my favorite part here.
I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran?
Don't. Don't
come across the border. Don't escalate this war.
That's right.
Pelley's like, you're going to need to give us a little more than that, Mr. President.
Let me just guess here.
But here's the real, this is the amazing part, and I want to credit somebody who goes on Twitter as Maze, M-A-Z-E, Mazemore, because that moment, and this is obviously a very distinctive thing.
I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran?
Don't. Don't
come across the border. Don't escalate this war.
That's right.
That's right. What you said.
That's right.
Okay, but here's the thing. It was a little over a year ago, another international crisis that didn't exist under President Trump, but now has exploded under Joe Biden. That would be the Russian incursion across Ukrainian borders. And there was some concern there at a certain point of that war that Putin and the Russians would use chemical weapons against the Ukrainians. Here comes Scott Pelley, Johnny on the spot, ready to deliver an interview with Joe Biden, and here's what that sounded like.
And I wonder, Mr. President, what you would say to him if he is considering using chemical or tactical nuclear weapons.
Okay, so that was his question then, which of course,
a year ago.
A year ago. And here's the question again, just to remind you.
I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer?
You think this stuff is pre-planned?
Yeah,
right?
You think.
Okay, so here's Scott Pelley a year ago asking.
And I wonder, Mr. President, what you would say to him if he is considering using chemical or tactical nuclear weapons.
Don't.
Oh, my God.
Don't.
Is that not freaky?
Creepy.
I mean, it's 5:15, WMAL, traffic and weather. Oh, what would it be like to have a real president? Traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives with Dan Alfer in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
And I wonder, Mr. President, what you would say to him if he is considering using chemical or tactical nuclear weapons.
Don't.
And I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran?
Don't.
That'll do it.
Yeah. hey, guys, we need another incomprehensible, inane talking point for President Biden. Just use the one you used with Putin last year.
It works.
Just have him say, don't. That'll work. And this is how they coach Biden before he sits down. Scott Pelley's going to ask you what your message is. The message is don't. Don't what? It doesn't matter, sir.
Just say don't.
Just say don't.
It really
Everyone will
is
get
the
it.
Dianne Feinstein rule of just say don't. Don't just say yes. Just say these little things.
Yeah. And then you'll
be
fine.
We know from reports that Biden's been complaining about being bossed around and managed too much.
Right. So, they won't let me do this.
Right.
All right, so then the interview went on a little bit. I do love the message, though. Now, there's the whole question of, well, you gave Iran $6 billion, and you keep wanting to give them another nuclear deal outside of the purview of the Constitution, and, aren't you concerned that they just helped coordinate this?
Is Iran behind the Gaza war?
I don't want to get into classified information, but to be very blunt with you.
I don't want to get into classified information.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I got to check my classified documents sitting next to the Corvette in the garage first, though. All right. So that's, again, what a...
Classified information, but to be very blunt with you, there is no clear evidence of that.
At this point, no evidence.
There's no clear evidence of
right.
that. Now, that's a very interesting modifier.
Yeah.
There's no clear evidence. What we do know, and he did go on to say, to give him some credit, don't get me wrong, Iran has funded and supported and planned attacks with Hezbollah and Hamas for decades, and they'll continue to do it, which is the new talking point they give you, which is like, okay, so, because that's obvious. They can't lie about that. But there's no evidence they had anything to do with this. So let's just think this through for a minute, Julie Gunlock. You help me out. You've got kids. When they start to give you an excuse. I know I've stolen cookies every day of my life. But there's no evidence that I stole today's cookies.
No clear evidence.
Right?
Right.
So they have coordinated with Hamas and Hezbollah for decades, and there's no indication that they won't in the future. But here, the single most complicated and expensive Hamas attack in the history of mankind, and there's no evidence Iran had anything to do with that.
And the foreign minister...
They coordinated with everything else,
I think
but
I'm
not
getting this right.
one.
I think it was the foreign minister of Iran actually saying, we will spend that money however we want. That's right. When they said it's supposed to only go through for humanitarian aid and food and all this stuff, he was like, we will spend it however we want.
Also, the leader of Hamas thanked Iran for their support and help in coordinating attack, but that's not clear evidence, apparently.
I mean,
the Wall Street Journal has an article saying that Iran helped coordinate and plan this attack, but we're to believe that, Wall Street Journal doesn't have any good context. At this point, I think they have better context than our own intelligence community
this has
does.
such pee on my leg and tell me it's raining vibes.
Yeah.
It is just insulting
exactly.
to the American public.
But to understand, the president's message is, the leader of the free world, again, clear, cohesive leadership and communication at a time of crisis, is that we know Iran has supported Hamas and Hezbollah and coordinated with them on terror attacks in the past and in the future, but we're not sure about this one.
Right.
We have no evidence, so we're not going to do anything about this one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he went on to, this is, such a pet peeve of mine, this one.
Look, this is not your father's Republican Party. 30% of it is made up of these MAGA Republicans.
Now, I love that he's now reduced it to, it's only 30% of the American people that I think are actually,
that need to
worthy
get re-educated.
that are worthy of the cult deprogramming that Hillary Clinton is. Only 30%. How many millions of Americans? This is the great unifier.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in and bring us together, except those 30% we're going to throw in jail.
Or maybe democracy is something they don't look at it the same way you and I look at it.
I love the the othering of the American people who happen to vote differently than what he would prefer. But let me just quickly pull on this little not your father's Republican. It's so boring. He says it all the time. Two things that you need to know. Number one, your father's Republican Party, and for that matter, your grandfather's Republican Party, Biden hated those guys too. He's sitting there like, oh, gosh, those Republicans from the past, like the Reagans, I loved those guys. No, he was one of the chief voices opposing Ronald Reagan back in the day. A man who is now revered as one of the top 5 presidents in American history.
Yeah.
Biden didn't like your father's Republican Party either. But if I may, this is not your father's Democrat Party.
That's right.
Harry Truman led the world as the first leader to recognize the right of Israel to exist. Does Ilhan Omar agree with Harry Truman? Does Rashida Tlaib agree with Harry Truman? Maybe he should clean up his own party before he starts.
Let's just start with Cori Bush, okay?
This is not your father's Democrat Party.
I know we're talking about pet peeves, but just mine really. Can Biden please start using consonants? I mean, it's just so there's no enunciation of any word. It's okay.
You're right. By the way, one other quick thing, because Scott, I love that this is Scott Belley's question after sitting with him for half an hour.
Are you sure that you want to run again?
I mean, he says what we're all thinking. I'll give him that. Yeah. So what's the reason? Now, you would think that his answer about running for president again would be about what he's going to do for the American people, right? What he's going to do for you and I. So for those of us who are struggling to pay for eggs and meat and have a good paying job that can keep up with inflation. And he's got, yes, I want to stay president because we've got crime problems in this country. And I'm going to do something.
I care about the border.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, because I'm sure, look, when I ran, I said, the world's at an inflection point. What? The world's changing, but we have an opportunity to make it. So imagine if we were able to succeed in getting the Middle East put in place where we have normalization of relations. I think we can do that. Imagine what happens if we, in fact, unite all of Europe and Putin is finally put down where he cannot cause the kind of trouble he's been causing. We have enormous opportunities.
So first of all, nothing about you and what you're going through in this country. Literally America last. And forget about America last. America not even mentioned.
Right.
It's really just about achieving world peace. But secondly, if I may, imagine a world where we have no more violence in the Middle East and harmony, and there are Arab nations making peace agreements with Israel. And in Europe, where everyone's unified and not utilizing Russian oil and gas, and Russia isn't invading its neighbors, and everyone's speaking together. Imagine that world, Julie. You know,
I lived that world.
We did.
We lived that world.
Right up until this guy became president.
That's right.
So he wants to be president for 4 more years to clean up the mess he's created. That's what he's telling you. World peace. Joe Biden's going to give the world peace, but he can't actually eat the peas on his plate. It's 524.
FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Allegedly, it's 5:37 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us on this. Is it Tuesday? It's my Monday.
It's Tuesday.
It's my Monday. I took yesterday off. And thank you again to Andrew Langer for filling in. Hey, coming up at 6:05, Michael Rivera is running for school board in Loudoun County. Want you to know about him. And at 6:35, Sheriff Mike Chapman. You already know him, but you got to know that he needs your vote as he's running for re-election. 7:05, Adam Credo of Free Beacon about the Hamas sympathizers within the Biden administration. And then at 7:35, Dr. Jennifer London, brand new book called Profiles in Character, really compelling stuff. That's all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlaw.
Good morning.
Julie, we saw an incredible increase of anti-Semitic behavior on college campuses over the week and through the weekend, specifically on Ivy League campuses. This is not just pro-Palestinian, and anybody who says pro-Palestinian, please pull on that thread with somebody for a while and find out exactly what they mean. If they venture into, this is an occupation.
Yeah.
You know what they mean. Because when they say occupation, end the occupation, what they mean is end Israel.
That's right.
And it drives me nuts that the TV hosts on television, and I'm not going to exclude Fox from this, across the board, every single I hate watching television why I am screaming back at the person.
I know. My family can't stand me right now.
Right. It's like ask them, whenever they say occupation, you should grind the interview to a screaming halt and say, be specific. Are you talking about Gaza? Because Israel hasn't occupied Gaza since 2005.
Right.
What are you talking about?
They've given electricity and water. Yes, I get it.
In fact, you should even say this. If you're sitting behind if you're Jake Tapper, I'll be specific. Jake Tapper.
It's a good one.
Hey, Jake, the next time somebody is an apologist for Hamas and saying that they're, worried about Palestinian people, and they throw the term occupation around, stop for a moment and say, that when Hamas says occupation, they mean the entire state of Israel.
Yes.
Is that what you mean when you say that? And if not, what do you mean when you say occupation?
Yes.
And let's get to the root of this, all right? And we've gotten to the root of it on college campuses.
And I just want to remind everybody, remind everybody, journalists used to do that.
Well, they still do. They still do. If a Republican goes up there and says that the 2020 election...
Oh, yes. There's a million follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
They stop everything there.
Yeah.
They still do it, just only in one direction. So, college campuses have seen an eruption right now of anti-Semitic, and I do mean anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, pro-extermination of Jews.
Totally, yes.
Here's a professor from Cornell University. His name is Russell Rickford. He was speaking at one of these so-called pro-Palestinian events.
And Russell Rickford, he is a BLM supporter. He's a radical leftist. He admits this.
It was exhilarating.
It was exhilarating, he says. I'll let the clip finish, but he's talking about the attacks.
Yes.
Right? When they
the
claim,
murder of Jews.
We're just worried about the innocent women and children who are right now being inflicted by this out of proportion response from the Israeli military. No. He actually is.
He's responding to the attacks by Hamas, beheadings, burnings, rapings,
and
murder.
What's the word he would use to describe it?
It was exhilarating. It was exhilarating. It was energetic. If they weren't exhilarated by this challenge to the monopoly of violence, by this shifting of the balance of power, then they would not be human. I was exhilarated.
I love that even the bloodthirsty pro-Hamas protesters that are out there with their hijabs and their face masks and their ISIS flags, even they're like, whoa, this guy's going too far.
Yeah.
It's like you get three people to say, yeah, exhilarating. Okay.
Is that the word we're going to use?
Is this going to be on the final?
Yes. Invigorating, exhilarating. I mean, this is creepstone. He's a psychopath. That's a psychopath.
Meanwhile, as you know, and I'm sure that you and Andrew spoke about on Friday with Patrice and yesterday, there's movement to identify the individual students at Harvard who are part of these organizations. 31 organizations have come out against Israel and in favor of the terrorists. And so John Hassan, one of my colleagues over at Town Hall, and a couple of other journalists has said, okay, let's find out who belongs to these organizations.
And that was excellent. But also yesterday we had Adam Gillette on Accuracy in Media.
Yeah.
And we talked about his mobile, his sort of screen.
Yeah, big
it's
LED
it's
billboard.
A big LED
that
billboard that goes, and he names and shames the people who signed. This was the Harvard. They went to Cambridge and they rode around the Harvard campus with the names displayed of the These are your leading anti-Semites on campus.
That's right.
I love it.
It's fantastic.
Love it.
And
yes.
there was there's a big debate. You know, Vivek Ramaswamy and Candace Owens have said, well, we shouldn't blacklist
they
these
signed
students.
their names.
Right.
They publicly signed their names. They are publicly part of these
doxing
organizations.
Them, they say.
That's not doxing. That's not doxing.
Megyn Kelly got into it with Candace Owens, and we can get into that a little bit later. Well, a lot of companies and organizations have there's been pressure on them to hire these people to prove that we have an open mind here at this company. By the way,
we're totally
any
accepting of murderers. Totally
right.
fine.
Any college student who wears a MAGA hat, of course, they are on a no hire list for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, the only place they're going is jail.
Well, there is good news about possibly some real movement here with regard to Harvard. The Wexner Foundation, which has been a huge financial supporter of Harvard, they have put out an open letter announcing that they are cutting all of their ties to Harvard, and they will not get one more red cent from the Wexner Foundation because of, quote, the dismal failure of Harvard's leadership to take clear and unequivocal stand against the barbaric murders of innocent Israeli civilians.
It's excellent.
By terrorists.
And also John Huntsman, he cut ties with UPenn because of their refusal to stand up against these disgusting and horrifying attacks by Hamas. So this is movement. But what's interesting? Someone made a comment on this on Twitter. So the rich people in America could have reversed some of this left lurching by universities in America with one. They just say, I'm cutting off funding. They could have done this years ago.
That's right.
And they didn't.
Yeah. My big issue with this is the Claude Rains in Casablanca. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
How are you shocked to see this manifest? This is
happening for years.
They're just doubling down on what they've been saying forever. The only difference is it happened after a terrorist. So you think they were just BSing before?
Right.
Yeah, you're right about that. All right, remember we told you the story that broke a few weeks ago. Now, this is before the terror attacks in Israel, engineered by Hamas, funded by Iran via our tax dollars. We told you the story of Robert Malley. Robert Malley is the man that the Biden administration and Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan put on point with regard to America's policy toward Iran. And Robert Malley assembled a team which included members of an organization that had been created by the Iran Foreign Ministry. Many years ago, the Iran Foreign Ministry found second-generation Iranian Americans to become part of basically a propaganda scheme to sit on think tanks and write white papers and boards and advisors about how we needed to normalize our relationships with Iran.
And
let me repeat, it was funded by the Iran Foreign Ministry. So this was a spy ring, basically, doing psyops. Yeah,
that's right.
Robert Malley, brought them into the Biden administration. Many of them still work in the United States government, including one at the Pentagon. In June, Robert Malley was put on leave, and his security clearance was suspended, and he's under investigation for the misuse of classified documents. What do you think that's all about? Meanwhile, here's a clip of him from several years ago.
Robert Malley was the lead negotiator.
Excuse me. This is Congressman Michael Waltz. I apologize. There is a clip of him from several years ago that I'll get for you in a moment, or maybe later in the program. But here is Congressman Waltz of Florida, who sits on the Armed Services Committee, talking about Robert Malley in light of what we've now learned.
Robert Malley was the lead negotiator, not just for Biden, but also for Obama, for the original Iran deal that then opened up billions in cash. But back then, the average cost of a hostage was $400 to $500 million. Now it's up to $1.2 billion. So he was absolutely responsible for this approach. He is an Iranian regime sympathizer. But what is so disturbing, guys, is that he had a whole network of people throughout the U.S. government. And I believe we only have seen the tip of the iceberg. We know that one of his network is over in the Pentagon's Special Operations Directorate for.
That's right. This is the tip of the iceberg. There's more. They're embedded into this government right now, and they were brought in by the Biden administration. And I'll repeat, Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. They are literally on the side of the Iranians.
That's right, and they are in our government.
As I mentioned,
the call is coming from inside the house.
Here's Robert Malley. This is what you get when you elect. Because it's funny. I had a debate with my stepmother the weekend, who's an old hippie from the '60s, and she's like, "Oh, Trump tweets mean things, and I don't like it." It's like, listen, and I'm like, "You're okay with Biden, who, frankly, is further gone than my 86-year-old father mentally right now?" And she goes, "Oh no, he's terrible too." And I said, "Okay, well, if you have a choice between two terrible people, and I don't think Trump is terrible,
I know,
but if that's what your choice is, then you got to look at the people that they put in place to run things,
right?"
And with the Biden administration, we get people who bring in terrorists, sympathizers.
There's a phrase in Washington: "Personnel is policy."
Personnel is policy.
Put in good people, you'll get good policy.
Well, here's the guy that Biden put in charge of our Iranian policy from several years ago.
Most prominent groups, although the Sadrists in Iraq also fall in that category. It's a mistake to only think of them in terms of their terrorist violence dimension.
He's talking about Hamas, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's a mistake to think of Hamas only about their terrorism.
Their social political movements, probably the most rooted movements in their respective societies. Hamas, not a majority among Palestinians by any means, but very deeply rooted. It's been, it was born in the first Palestinian Intifada in the 1980s. It has deep loyalty. It has a charity organization, a social branch.
Wow.
It's not something you can defeat militarily either. And
that's Robert Malley. That's who Joe Biden decided to put in place. And that leads Joe Biden to say things like this on his 60 Minutes interview.
Is Hamas and the extreme elements of Hamas don't represent all the Palestinian people.
Think about that phrase for a moment. Hamas and the extreme elements of Hamas. I'm sorry. If you're a member of Hamas,
you're extreme. Period.
Period.
You're done.
But now this is what they're trying to sell to us.
That's right.
Oh no, there are moderates within. Remember the Taliban? It's like, no, we're not talking about. We're talking to the moderates.
And Larry, it's also important to remember that they consider men who go to a Latin mass extreme. This is the Biden administration.
Mom who goes to the school board meeting.
This is the Biden administration. This is how wacky, how out of their mind they are.
Yeah, and this is why Joe Biden right now is, thank God, failing at every level within the political. I'm not thanking God that he's failing because I don't want our country to fail, but politically, we're going to tell you some poll numbers coming up later in the program.
This is Potemkin's village. We are living in Potemkin's village right now. It is a nice, shiny outside, but it is this country, the leadership of this country is failing.
I'm the mayor of